Well, Ziggy is also more clearly defined as a symbolic character. Ziggy was a real boy. He was 2 and a half, 3 years older than me and Georgie, and Ziggy sort of morphed to become Link in what you call Tumbleweeds. So he's more definitely symbolic. The last image of him sort of dancing on the snowy Ridgewood in the end of that book sort of makes that clear. One thing I to mention though is each of the four books basically corresponds to about a decade. 0 to 9, the first 9 years of my life, I lived in Ridgewood, a section of Queens. The next book is 9 to 18, and that takes me from moving to Glendale to the end of my high school, so 18. And then the next one is from 18 to 26, which is from high school to when I left New York. And then 26 to 38 encompasses my years in Minnesota until I moved to Texas. I did two other memoirs after that. One which was a mixture of essays and memoirs, and then I did one on the mob front that I had worked in my teen years. But a lot of that stuff, the mob one, which I called the company stories, when I worked for this mob front called the company, I had left out of here specifically because I had enough stuff that I didn't need that, but also too, I was a little bit paranoid too about writing about that for other reasons. But anyway, go ask your questions about the second.
One thing about Ziggy though, since you did mention him, it's interesting how both Ziggy and Paco more or less dominate you in such a way, even though internally you're way ahead of them. But and how the later male figures in your life who are more influential, such as say Walt Whitman or your friend Joe, they become more subsumed by you. You're more the ringleader in that way. You use Whitman as a way to get into higher versions of his poetry and write poems Whitman could have never written, and your friend Joe is more like your de facto sidekick in some of these tales. Whereas Ziggy and Paco, more or less, you were the sidekick to them, and they ran you.
Well, yeah, and I knew Ziggy from 1971 till 73, 74 maybe. I think I lost touch with Ziggy before I left, so probably end of 73. So I was, the difference between a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, say, or 5.5 and an 8.5-year-old is tremendous. The difference between Paco and me wasn't so much the age, although he was about 1.5 years, 2 years older, but he was the head of this gang, and I was sort of a fringe player because I wasn't in with the white kids that went to the school. I did have some friends with some of the black kids, but most of the kids that I knew, black, white, or Hispanic, were scumbags. So